winds of diplomacy grow colder, and the waters of the Indo-Pacific more turbulent. Today, the world watches as the U.S. Navy deploys one of its most formidable assets, the Nimitz-Class Aircraft Carrier near China's maritime frontier. This is not just a display of power, it's a calculated move in a high-stakes game of geopolitics. Let's begin with what makes a Nimitz-Class aircraft carrier so iconic. Named after Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, these carriers are the backbone of the U.S. Navy. With a displacement of over 100,000 tons, they can carry up to 90 aircraft and are powered by nuclear reactors, giving them virtually unlimited range. To understand the significance of this deployment, we need to look at the broader strategic picture. The South China Sea has become a flashpoint of tensions. China claims almost the entire region as its own, building artificial islands and militarizing them. The U.S., alongside its allies, has consistently challenged these claims, advocating for freedom of navigation. The timing of this deployment is no coincidence. It comes amid increasing friction between the U.S. and China, whether it's trade technology or territorial disputes. This move could escalate tensions further, with China likely viewing it as a direct provocation. The U.S. isn't alone in its stance. Allies like Japan, Australia, and the Philippines have expressed concerns over China's growing assertiveness. This deployment may reassure them of U.S. support, but it also puts pressure on them to take stronger stances. The USS George Washington, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, has returned to Yokosuka, Japan, to serve as the U.S. Navy's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier. This marks a return to Japan for the ship, which previously held the same role from 2008 to 2015 before being relieved by the USS Ronald Reagan. The United States Navy's 6th Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier and the 4th warship to honor the founding father and the nation's first president arrived in Yokosuka, Japan on Friday. USS George Washington will take on the role of the U.S. Navy's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier. "We are proud to bring George Washington back to Yokosuka and back to the location of the most meaningful time in the ship's history," said Rear Admiral Greg Newkirk, commander, Task Force 70, and the George Washington Carrier Strike Group. Her crew is made up of both returning friends and many new to Japan, where they and their families will create lifelong memories and friendships in this magnificent Japanese city, added Newkirk. Together, the combined community backdropped by the JMSDF fleet and America's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier represents a shared vision of peace and prosperity across the region. We are truly allies, friends, and family. The Flat Top had previously served as the forward-deployed Naval Forces Japan carrier beginning in 2008, when it also became the first nuclear-powered warship to fill that role. She was relieved by USS Ronald Reagan in 2015. The two Nimitz-class carriers conducted a hull swap in San Diego over the summer after CVN-76 completed her forward deployment. The change of guard of the carriers is required by Title 10 Armed Forces, Chapter 863 Naval Vessels, Section 8690, and it limits the length of time a U.S. Navy vessels can be forward deployed overseas for just 10 years. After that period, the warship must be assigned to a home port in the U.S. Navy. That doesn't mean that the sailors on CVN-73 will spend a decade with the carrier. The typical length for sailors stationed with the FDNF-J is 36 months, but that can vary depending on their role. To improve readiness and to help reduce turnover in key positions, first-term sailors may be assigned to sea duty in Japan for up to 48 months, but if sailors are not allowed to bring dependents, their tour may be shorter and is typically around 24 months. After USS George Washington departed Yokosuka in 2014, there were serious discussions in the Pentagon that called for taking the carrier out of service to budget reductions. The nuclear-powered carrier was due to her midlife refueling and complex overhaul, RCOH, an expensive and time-consuming process that was meant to double the service life of each of the Nimitz-class flat tops. However, the decision was made to keep the warship in service and to complete the RCOH, but few could have expected the order that was to come. The process typically takes around 3 years, but USS George Washington underwent a brutally long repair period that lasted more than 2,100 days. With the refit completed and the carrier back in Japan, USS George Washington is arguably better than she was when she first was commissioned on July 4, 1992. During the RCOH, Newport News shipbuilders replaced thousands of valves, pumps, and piping components, while on the outside, they performed major structural updates to the island, mast, and antenna tower. Upgrades have been made to all aircraft launch and recovery equipment, while the carrier's hull, including sea chests and freeboard, has been painted. The team restored the propeller shafts and installed refurbished propellers and rudders. In addition, greater focus was also put on improving the ship's living areas, including crew living spaces, galleys, and mess decks. The entire process involved more than 25 million total man-hours of work. Given the upgrades, USS George Washington isn't simply as good as new, it is now a far more capable warship. A U.S. carrier represents the most advanced maritime capability we have, and it's the most advanced investment we can make in the security of Japan and of the Western Pacific, said Vice Admiral Fred Katcher, Commander, U.S. 7th Fleet. The George Washington returns with modernized, cutting-edge technology that represents our investment in deterrence and security in this region. So what's next? This deployment underscores the shifting balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. It's a reminder that the world's oceans are a stage for both cooperation and conflict. As the U.S. and China navigate this complex dynamic, the stakes couldn't be higher. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into global events. Share your thoughts in the comments. How do you see this deployment influencing the U.S.-China relationship?